Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is 10:56 in the p.m., Friday, December 26th, in the year of our Lord, 2025. We are barreling towards the end. Looking forward to a better 2026 and what that might mean for you, me, our families, our friends, the people that we care about, and the bastards who wish us ill will. Times are rough, times are ugly, and we don't know where the fuck it is that we stand. But what we do know is that the fight's not over. We're all still out here beating the shit out of whatever the fuck it is that's standing in front of us, trying to make sense of it. Wherever you stand politically, socially, racially, sexually, culturally, from a religious standpoint, we're all mired in shit, and we're all trying to understand it. Unfortunately, my podcast partner, Mr. Ibrahim Chavez, is unable to be here with me at this time, so as is wont to do on that rare occasion where an episode needs to go out, I am forced to get on the microphone by myself and either wow you or force you to wonder what kind of an asshole believes that he can talk for an hour and change with anything of importance to anybody out there. Well, the truth is, I don't know if any of it is important. I don't know if any of it matters, except to say that I remember reading a Charles Bukowski poem where he would talk about letters that he would receive from men in prison, men on shit jobs, people who found themselves unable to make sense of it, but that somehow Bukowski's writings, the poetry, the short stories, the novels, would somehow reach into them and give them purpose and meaning. I think artists, of which I consider myself, hope that that's what they're doing. But I don't have any illusions. I think, for the most part, this is just a couple of assholes talking on the mic about the movies that mean something to them, the movies that have affected them in a certain way. When I started doing this podcast 15 or so years ago, 15, maybe 16 years ago now, I've lost track at this point. When I first set out to do this, it seemed to me that I was fighting to make sense of something that maybe couldn't be made sense of. The love that somebody has for a particular art form, whether it be painting, sculpture, sketching, music, acting, writing, or in this case, cinema. It's such an arbitrary form of expression that those of us who have no talent for it absorb and find purpose for within ourselves. And I don't know, maybe I'm rambling, but I do say that for those who listen to this podcast, who have so generously donated over the last year or so that we've had our buymeacoffee.com venue, I imagine from that and some of the emails that I have received, of which I don't receive anymore, possibly because I was late in getting back to so many of them, but there seems to have been a number of people who took to heart what we do here. And if what we do resonates with you, then all the better. But truth be told, I'm doing it for myself in the way that Bukowski explained. It's staving off the demons. It's keeping insanity at bay. It's making it possible to go to that shit job that you have and somehow give meaning to the 8 hours that you give them and the paycheck that they give you, that in turn funds your passion. I was talking to a kid the other day, 22-year-old girl, who, at the job that I work at, she was being put on the register, and her numbers weren't exactly as great as they could have been, and she was being made fun of by somebody, and she was, I don't know if she really did take it to heart or if she was just trying to muscle through it with laughter, but I told her, it doesn't fucking matter. I asked her, does she want to die here? And she looked at me, and she was kind of taken aback. But I said, think about it. If there's something that you want, if there's something that you love, if there's something that you need to do, you need to focus on getting there, making that possible. I spent close to 25 years chasing my passion, chasing stage time, chasing acting, and I came back to Phoenix in 2020 feeling a failure. And in one sense I was. That's absolutely true. There's no doubt about it. I would be a fool to think otherwise. In the true definition of failing to do what I had dreamed of, intended to spend my life doing and fighting for. But here's the thing about that. When you go into the arts, when you go into the performing arts particularly, you have an understanding, unless you're somebody of incredible talent, unless you're Eddie Murphy who says, I'm going to be a star, and you have such incredible talent behind you that it's almost impossible to imagine that story playing out any other way. The likelihood of you becoming a star and the likelihood of you even being able to make a living doing it are slim. The truth is, I came to it at the worst possible time that you could come into it, when it was almost impossible to make a living, when you found yourself just scraping by all the time. And I realized that near the end of my 20-year Los Angeles run, that it needed to end. But when I would come back to Phoenix, when I would return with my head held low, unable to make eye contact, sad, depressed, angry, bitter, I took a series of jobs to make ends meet, to contribute to a family, parents, nephew, and took a job eventually, I'm not going to name where, but that I imagined I would feel was beneath me and that I would hate every second of. But here's the interesting take on that. When you know that you took your shot and you did everything that you could, or at least everything within the parameters of the choices that you made, you come to the realization that you ask yourself, was it worth it? And the truth is, there was no other choice to be made. I was going to go to Los Angeles. I was going to dedicate myself to stand-up comedy and acting, performing and entertaining. And regardless, the sacrifices I made would make it possible. I never got married. I never had children. But I also realized that if I had been married, I would be divorced. And if I had children, I probably would have fucked them up a little bit worse than, maybe a little bit better than most kids are fucked up. The truth is that you can't handicap that thing. You just can't look into the future and see what's going to happen. You play the hand you're dealt, and a lot of times you have to fold. But there's something about the game. Because if I hadn't spent the first 25 years of my life, of my career, getting drunk and telling jokes, going on to the Warner Brothers, Paramount, Universal Studios lots, auditioning for small walk-on under 5 roles that I wasn't going to get. If I hadn't done that, if I hadn't done it for as long as I did, if I hadn't chased that dream, I would have ate and drank myself to death, or I would have ate a bullet. As simple as that. Not being overly dramatic. A lot of people live that life. But a lot of people didn't have the dream. So, within that passion, you meet people that make a difference in your life. You meet people that inspire, who teach you a little bit about yourself, who reinforce who you are. And if you're fortunate enough, you can find somebody who does both of those things and then will collaborate with you. That's why this show, Watch This with Rick Ramos, that we've been doing for this many years, means so much. Number one, it's an outlet. It's an artistic outlet for discussion and the recognition of cinema as an art form, television as an art form, the moving image, music, writing, acting, directing, the composition of cinematic brilliance, beauty. That's all we do here week in and week out. We talk about movies, we talk about what they mean to the culture, but more importantly, we talk about what they mean to us as individuals, me, myself, Rick Ramos, my partner, Ibrahim Chavez. And we discuss, we put out our impressions of what we watch in order to understand our own individual takes a little bit better. And the fact that so many of you choose to support us week in and week out by listening, and granted there's not a lot of you, but the fact is that there are people who have supported us over a dozen or so years. People who have chosen to contribute, people who donate out of the kindness of their hearts because they recognize what it is that we do. We're very fortunate. Mr. Chavez is a hard-working man. I am a hard-working man. We do a 40-hour week, 8-hour day at jobs that do not fulfill us. But the fact is that we have this. We have this to give meaning to it. And like I told that young girl, 22 years old, do you want to die here? Is there anything that you want? Anything that you dream of, and she told me that there was, and she told me, and I was like, well, then you should be moving towards that. Use this to fund that. And that's what I do. Don't get me wrong. I'm a hard worker. I'm a good worker. I take pride in my job. I bust my ass. Nobody can say otherwise. And if they do, they can go fuck themselves. But the truth is, I lay it down every day. But I have something to invest. I have a creative outlet. Everyone out there, the painters, the illustrators, the musicians, the singers, the writers, those of you who have been in contact with me over the last, decade and a half, I admire you. I encourage you. I hope that you continue to push forward, doing the thing that makes sense for you. That's why tonight's a fun little talk that I have to do alone, sitting here in the darkness, the fortress of ultimate darkness. The bull terrier is asleep, or he will wake up in a few minutes and I'll have to deal with him. But he has pissed and shit himself, such that hopefully I will not have to. I want to talk about my favorite genre, the film noir. It's strange because when you watch as many films as I've watched, you find yourself being disappointed more often than not by movies. And you find yourself trying not to get too excited about something either new or something that you have somehow missed. This past month of cult films and midnight movies gave me a chance to rewatch the Rocky Horror Picture Show, which this time without an audience hit me in a completely different way and made me realize how incredible Tim Curry is as a performer. I mean, it just phenomenal. But then into Faster Pussycat Kill Kill, a film that I was in a sense dreading, but was so overwhelmed by and so taken with. When you can find that, it's really an amazing thing. But giving us the chance to go into movies and talk about them, I think is, whether it was last week talking about Black Dynamite, watching it again, I forgot how much I loved the film. But then talking about it with Ibrahim, I'm reminded. The Holy Mountain, Office Space, whatever happened to Baby Jane, the whole history of 20th century cinema, just in the hatred between Bette Davis and Joan Crawford. Remembering David Lynch with Eraserhead. This has been a phenomenal month that I cannot even begin to quantify. I mean, it's before that, dedicating 2 months to vampire movies and realizing, oh my God, there are still vampire movies that we haven't seen, that we haven't talked about. That is an incredible realization. Shadow of the Vampire, Vampire, The Vortilac, Salem's Lot, a film that I should have seen 40 years ago but just barely got to. The Magic of South Korea, once again with Thirst, Park Chan-wook. Vampire Hunter D, anime as, human as vampire seeking consenting suicidal person. The fact is that we are able to find these movies and enlighten our own lives, but also contribute something to yours, hopefully. Hopefully it means something that, a few of you went out and discovered these films. You discovered them for yourselves, and hopefully you enjoyed them as much as we did. Hopefully you enjoyed them more. But if you didn't and you thought, Jesus Christ, that sucked, well, that's the reality of the situation as well. We've talked a lot about movies We've talked great movies. We've talked great performances. Denzel Washington in Flight, The Book of Eli, Malcolm X. We've talked about cinema and how it reflects a society that sometimes seems hopeless and selfish, a very pessimistic and cynical look at the world that we live in. Today I was talking to a friend who was getting ready to watch Spotlight, and I remembered talking about that with Mr. Chavez and thinking about the power of a story about seeking the truth, which is something that seems a foreign idea in today's America. The ugliness of the world that we live in. And I find myself being drawn into that world because as a cynic, you kind of want to watch something that validates your opinion. But also, I think there's something about the narrative on television, in film, that reinforces that cynicism. But each of us as individuals can find some kind of hope. And don't be mistaken, I think that each one of us has some ember of hope. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to get out of bed every day. There's something in each and every one of us that wants to continue, that wants to win. And although all of the signals might be negative, and it might seem hopeless, the very fact that each of us gets up and moves forward says something about that will. This week I sat down and watched two Noirs, one from the 50s, one from 1990. The first was a Harry Belafonte produced, Robert Wise produced and directed Odds Against Tomorrow, which is a film that I had never heard of, but I had heard mentioned in Elvis Mitchell's really enlightening documentary, Is That Black Enough for You? I think that's the name of the movie that, not the movie, but the documentary that he produced for. I'm sorry that I'm typing, but sometimes you gotta go find the information, even if it's not directly at your fingertips. So Is That Black Enough for You? Great documentary about the history of African American black contributions to cinema, whether it's filmmakers, actors, directors, writers, costume designers, music, everything. I highly recommend it if you have Netflix. Check it out. Spend your time educating yourself. But this was a film. Odds Against Tomorrow was a film that I became aware of through this documentary, and it stars a young Harry Belafonte who had up to that point tried to position himself, or at least was pushed as a black matinee idol, but with the restrictions that Hollywood would place on somebody like that. And because Belafonte was outspoken, because he was not the type that would quietly sit back. He was very active in the civil rights movement. He was very active in letting people know that there was a change was going to come. And I think he, as I remember the movie talking about, he found himself slipping away out of Hollywood to dedicate himself to other aspects that he could be more effective in. But this is a film that he would produce. He would produce through his production company, and it's really kind of remarkable that a film like this. Noir is a very dark, brooding, pessimistic, and cynical genre of filmmaking, and there have been arguments as to whether or not it's a genre or it's a style of filmmaking. Because some films are, Blade Runner is technically a science fiction film, but it's a noir. It has elements of the noir. There's something about the shadows, the femme fatale, the way Sean. Oh my God, I can't even remember her fucking name. The way that Rachel is made up in the film, the way her hair is done, the style of dress, it's very Rosalind Russell from His Girl Friday, I believe His Girl Friday, and The Front Page, and that style. Dangerous Women. So that is technically a science fiction film, but it's a detective story, and detective stories are typically noirs. Odds Against Tomorrow is about three men, an ex-cop, played by Ed Begley Jr., who is blackballed, kicked out of police work. I think because he wouldn't cooperate on some element. He decides to, the central idea of just about any noir or any great noir is the lead character who's either a bum, a misfit, a misunderstood loser, somebody who is down on their luck, who has a momentary glimpse of success. And a great deal of that has to do with crime. So in this film, Ed Begley, who was one of the jurors, the angriest, most racist juror in Sidney Lumet's original 12 Angry Men, he plays an ex-cop who comes up with a plan to rob a bank in a small upstate New York town. But he needs muscle in the form of a racist ex-con played by Robert Ryan, who is fucking brilliant in this movie, who was so good, who's menacing. And Robert Ryan, if you don't know, is one of the great character actors of the 50s, 60s into the 70s, and you would have seen him in The Wild Bunch as I think the character was Deke Thornton, William Holden's partner in crime, who in flashback you find out the relationship and how Holden's character, you could argue, betrayed him, or at least left him to be apprehended by the law. Deke Thornton is thus conscripted basically to hunt his friends. And in this film, he's an ex-con, he's muscle, he's volatile, and he's somebody who is needed for his violent nature and his power in such situations. His character is at odds with Harry Belafonte's character, who is portrayed as a good man, but a man who is a victim to his own weaknesses, namely gambling and living a certain kind of of life. This is a man who loves his wife, or at least the woman who he's separated from, a woman who's decided that she doesn't want his life to be her life and her daughter's life, his daughter. He finds himself in debt to the mob, is unable to pay, but is needed in this particular caper to rob a bank, because every night when payroll is being distributed through this bank, a black bellhop, a black soda jerk, basically, not a bellhop, but a soda jerk, somebody, which is what they used to call people that worked in soda fountains, would carry over coffee and sandwiches to a bank. So the plan is to have those two switched out, get into the bank under the guise of being the soda jerk, and then rob the bank. But as with most noirs, the plot itself is mostly a MacGuffin. The plot itself is negligible. Noirs typically are pessimistic narratively. So these characters that you come to watch and become hopefully interested and excited by, it will end badly for them. And that's the quality of it. That's kind of what a noir has to be. I remember I watched the Wachowskis' Bound, a film that is considered a classic, and one that I thought was really good for a great deal of its running time, but made the fatal flaw of it really didn't stick the landing because it cared too much about its characters to let the story play out in a noir-like fashion. So it had them win, which, if you watch noir, robs it of the power. And one day I'll talk. We've been planning a month of gay-themed, homosexual, lesbian-themed films, and it's mostly because we just love movies that are good stories. I want to talk about Boys Don't Cry. I want to talk about that film. I want to talk about Hedwig and the Angry Inch. There's a number of films that I'd like to discuss that deal with that topic. Of course, Brokeback Mountain and Milk, the two films that are groundbreaking. And there's certain elements that we need to discuss with heterosexual actors playing gay characters. But there's a whole history of movies that needs to address that. So, anyway, what I was saying was, there's a bleakness and there is a bleakness and a necessity of self-destruction and plans falling apart in a noir. And if a noir doesn't have that, it feels as though it's a cheat and it betrays everything that has come before it. Whatever you watch, I don't think you want to watch it. Noirs have to end badly. And Odds Against Tomorrow isn't so much about whether or not they're going to get away with this heist. It's how it's going to fall apart, and the relationships between the main characters, how they play off of each other. And I got to say, Harry Belafonte is a noble character, but he's a weak character. He's a man that cannot control his gambling habit, and it proves to be his destruction. It's the reason that he's drawn into this situation. It's the reason that he's unable to find any other avenue to be successful. It's interesting because Harry Belafonte he's a musician in the film, and he's playing nightclubs. He's good. he has an incredible singing and stage presence even in this film. But the demons are great, and the demons will bring you down. And that's why, as you watch it, you're watching more than a narrative that's going to go in a direction that part of the fun is watching how it's going to fall apart, the mistakes that are going to be made, the things that these characters don't take into account, or the way the story doesn't plan out the way they think it's going to happen, or the little problems that arise and the tension that builds from being recognized in one instance. At a point in the film, there was a car, as Ed Begley and Robert Ryan are driving into this small town. Belafonte has arrived on a bus and is walking through the streets. There's a car accident, and a cop stops Belafonte as a witness. Wants to get his name, gets a good look at his face. How's that going to play out later? But more importantly, how is it going to play out later, but how is it going to affect the relationship between the three men? All three of whom are desperate for this plan to succeed. One, Belafonte, who was nervous about dedicating himself to it. Ryan, who is violent, and you can almost, whatever's going to go wrong is probably going to be at his hand. And Ed Begley, who is the supposed mastermind, and his desperation to overlook obvious problems that are going to face them. The greatness of this film, and it's not a great film, but what really works is the desperation. It's palpable. You can sense it. And a noir, the great thing about a noir is that, like with the way I watch films, I imagine myself in that story and what I would do. And as I'm watching, and I watch what happens and the choices the characters make, I wonder, would I have made that choice? Is that a reasonable choice? In some cases you think no. But then you have to add certain elements into the equation. When I took my nephew to see Heat a couple of months back, we were talking about it afterwards, and I have a close family friend who's a cop, and he went with us. And we were talking about the movie and how the characters most of the characters have a fatal flaw. Either one is an adrenaline junkie. Tom Sizemore's character is an adrenaline junkie. Danny Trejo's character loves his girlfriend or his wife, who is kidnapped from him, beaten, raped, murdered. And, I'm not saying that that's a weakness. The idea in the movie is, as De Niro says, have nothing that you can't walk away from in 30 seconds flat if you feel the heat around the corner. Now, if you got a wife, you got kids, you got a family, you got a home, you can't do that. De Niro's character is the only character that that has the code and lives by it. And the moment that he betrays his code is when he fails and loses. He can stand by and watch his best friend, Val Kilmer's character, as his marriage crumbles from a gambling addiction. He can watch that, and yet he knows, I need these guys. If only for this one last job, which is never the last job. It will never be. And I was talking about this with my nephew, and he was asking questions like, well, why not this or why not that? And I was like, because that's not the way people act. What's great about film, what's great about stories is that you have to ask yourself, would a character do this? When you've established that a character is of a certain intelligence, either high intelligence or low intelligence, medium intelligence or just a regular person, their actions have to be dictated by that intelligence, by their level of intelligence, a level of intelligence that has been established. Or, and this is where it gets interesting for me, I think, or they find themselves betraying their instincts and their intelligence because of their weaknesses in regard to the things that excite them. The adrenaline, the gambling, the women, the need for personal relationships. While on the other side you have cops who are dealing with the same struggles. That's one of the things that makes Heat so brilliant, is that you see both De Niro and Pacino, and you get the sense of how fucked up each of them are. With Pacino being worse, but like John Voight tells De Niro in the film, this guy can afford to fuck up. You can't. You get one shot. And it's the same with Odds Against Tomorrow. They're risking everything. They're risking prison. They're risking their lives. The heist goes off. But you're sitting there watching, waiting. How is this going to fucking turn? How is this going to end shittily? How is this going to go sideways? And it does. It does, and it does badly. And then it becomes a chase in black and white, my favorite style of shooting, through an industrial area where ultimately you have these two men, Robert Ryan and Harry Belafonte, facing off in a way that you were hinted at throughout the movie. Go see the movie, check it out, and I think you won't be disappointed. Do watch that. I recently saw Charlie Varick. A friend of mine had been talking about it, so I hadn't seen it in years. I watched it, loved it. We'll be doing an episode on that at some point because I think it's an important film. And I got stories to tell about that one. Odds Against Tomorrow, though, I mean, Kino Lorber put out a pretty good disc of it. Tonight, after I finished everything that I needed to do, or at least avoided everything that I needed to do to a point where I could watch a movie, I picked up James Foley's 1990 After Dark My Sweet, an adaptation of a Jim Thompson novel. Now, if you've never seen if you're not familiar with Jim Thompson, he wrote The Killer in Me, The Killer Inside Me, and The Killer in Me. I'm not sure what the exact name. That was made into a film. All right, Casey Affleck and Jessica Alba. I can't remember somebody else. But he also wrote The Grifters, which is one of the greatest, if not, I would argue the greatest neo-noir that I've seen. And I think part of its brilliance is that it feels like a contemporary 50s movie. It feels like that film feels like it was actually, it's emulating the 1950s. It's emulating the story that is told. And I have to sit down and read The Grifters. I've read The Killer in Me, and I love that. This film, After Dark My Sweet, is, again, losers. Losers wandering the land looking for opportunity, looking for a chance to redeem themselves, looking for some way to make it make sense. And it's a slow moving film. There's not a lot of action in it, but there's a level of tension that is constantly maintained, that as you watch it, you're anticipating and you're unsure of how it's going to play. And I think that's what I really dug about this film. I hadn't seen it. I'd never seen it. I wanted to make time for it. I've been meaning to make time for it. And I finally decided, well, it's the end of the year. Let's end this on a shitty, dark note that captures the ugliness of the world that we live in. And this film certainly does that. I was watching it thinking, I wasn't thinking anything really. I think that's one of the surprising things. I was totally taken in by the tension of the film. Although it's not a narrative that drew me in. It's weird. The story didn't compel me as much as the feeling that I had watching the movie, making me nervous, making me unsure of what was going to happen next, making me question my own impression. It's the story of a young man, Kevin Kid Collins, a very early film by Jason Patric. I think he had just done The Lost Boys, and Patrick is an interesting actor because he's gone out of his way to push away from big budget star making films. He's a good looking actor that has dedicated himself to character work for the most part. This, Rush, Narc is incredible. I love that film. We're going to talk about that at some point. But he's playing a character. And here's the thing. I can't say too much about the film because I don't want to give away too much. And, normally Ibrahim and I, well, when I'm working with Ibrahim, we talk about every aspect of the film. But I feel like this is an opportunity for me to just talk about the excitement that I feel for it. The character that he plays is an ex-boxer. So there's an element there of, is he punch drunk? Because he comes off as off. There's something not right about the character. It doesn't feel like he's the smartest guy in the room, but it doesn't feel like he's necessarily, he's a dangerous character because he's evolved a character, because he's unpredictable. He's wandering the desert, looking for some kind of meaning to looking for something that's gonna mean something to him, and he stumbles into this town, which is a number of Noirs, Red Rock West, definitely Detour. I did an episode on that a couple of years ago. That was a film that I fell in love with. I had never seen it, but I was like bowled over and just knocked out by its brilliance. If you've never seen that, Edward G. Ulmer's Detour, with just fucking great. But this film, Patrick's character Kid Collins, he runs into a woman, Rachel Ward. So it's your standard paint by numbers femme fatale. You don't know if she's a good woman, you don't know if she's a bad woman. Part of the beauty of these kinds of films is that they're painted in these gray colors and these shades and sometimes you're just not sure what the hell it is you're dealing with. Bruce Dern, always a scumbag, and I don't know if I've ever seen Bruce Dern play a character that wasn't a scumbag. And he shows up as I don't know if he's an ex-cop. I don't know if he's bullshitting about his life, but he has this snake oil charm, and Dern uses it to a full effect. I think he's one of the great character actors. I think he's really like a phenomenal presence on screen. If you don't know, rent Michael Ritchie's Digstown with James Woods and Lou Gossett Jr. I just think that's easily one of the greatest Switch surprise ending films. Just phenomenal. I love that film. But in this film, he has a certain type of charm that I imagine is appealing in a way that would convince you to trust him. Although as I watch a movie and I see Bruce Dern come on screen, I know you don't trust this guy. This guy is bad news. This guy is, Dern has made a career out of playing characters like that. If you want to just say it bluntly, he's been typecast into this role of a con man, and he plays it beautifully. And he plays it in this film very understated, very much a snake that is just kind of moving through the narrative. I love him in this film. It's his idea to kidnap a child, collect the ransom, but Patrick is either genuinely paranoid or punch drunk and somewhat certain problems with cognitive thinking and cognitive rationalization, if you want. I guess Patrick is drawn into the character. Patrick is drawn into the desire to be a part of something that will give his life purpose in a way and give him the money that he needs to go. It's always about the score and how the score is going to help you make sense of your life, when in true reality is the score is just going to fuck things up so badly that you're never going to be able to come back from it. I think that's one of the great aspects of film noir, is that it's the desperation of characters as they find themselves searching for a score that will give them both financial security but also psychological, emotional, mental success, where it'll make the pieces fall into place. It'll give them the opportunity. It'll give each of these men and women opportunities to get out from underneath the thumb of their relationships, whether it's a woman with an abusive husband, or the job, or debt, or gambling addiction, drug addiction, whatever. I mean, I think what's brilliant about noir is that good noir attacks our own sense of vulnerability. It goes to those places and forces each one of us watching to look at the troubling aspects of our character and how we're controlled by our base desires. The three leads in this film, Patrick, Bruce Dern, Rachel Ward, they're all very good, because you don't know exactly what they're thinking. You're not sure. With Bruce Dern, you know he's a scumbag. You know he can't be trusted. But to what extent can't he be trusted? To what degree can you put your faith in him being the scumbag that he is, that you can still salvage and use? You can salvage the situation and use him to succeed in what you need to pull yourself out of whatever muck you find yourselves in. Rachel Ward has a certain sexiness to her that is underplayed from other films like Against All Odds, that her film with Jeff Bridges and James Woods, a film that I haven't seen in years and would love to return to. I think that's Rachel Ward. But what's great about this film is, like Odds Against Tomorrow, trying to figure out how these losers are going to swim through these waters and figure out what needs to be done. All the while knowing there's a hopelessness to it. There is an absolute hopelessness. It cannot go right. They cannot fix this situation. The walls will come down. But it's like watching people in stressful situations. Do they react to one another in a realistic manner? And am I excited by the way that plays out? In this film, I gotta say it, I do. I'm interested in going back to the source material. I think there's a hardback edition of James Thompson novels that is going to be released in March. I'm looking forward to picking that up. The Killer Inside Me. I think The Grifters is included in that, and then this. So I gotta say, there's something about this that is compelling. And the older I get, the more bleak the world looks to me. I find myself doing a job that I don't particularly care about, but I also understand is necessary for me to do. There's not a hopelessness in me in the way these characters find themselves. And I think true hopelessness feeds that desire to break the law, to go for the big payday. A lot of these things, for example, like Bruce Dern in this film, or Ed Begley. Well, not so much Ed Begley, because in Odds Against Tomorrow, he's bullshitted himself into believing that this plan that has all kinds of holes in it can work. In this film, Bruce Dern is in a way like the devil, and he convinces Rachel Ward and he convinces Jason Patric to go along with him by preying on their greed, preying on their psychological weakness, her alcoholism, and his mental instability. And the way it plays is really well. I mean, it's handled beautifully. Point A to point Z and all the places in between. And as you're watching it, there are moments when you think, oh, I didn't see that coming, but that makes sense why they would have done that. And that's my favorite kind of move in these films. I didn't see it. I didn't think that was going to happen, but it makes perfect sense why it would. And you find yourself being overwhelmed by that. So, those are my recommendations for the week. That's just me talking and letting you know how I feel. And I guess the first 15-20 minutes of this episode was just trying to reassure myself why we do this, and hopefully connecting with you, those of you out there that are listening, that it actually means something. So if you want to show your gratitude, tell your friends about the show. Let's build up the listenership. Let's get those numbers up. And if you want to help us personally, financially, help keep the lights on, help keep Libsyn paid, because Libsyn is the library. I mean, you can download us on Apple, on iTunes, but if you really want to hear all of the episodes, all of the episodes from the time that I stopped recording with Lee Syed, and 14 years ago or whatever it was. All of the episodes are on the Libsyn site. Watch This with Rick Ramos at Libsyn.com or whatever it is. If you go to Libsyn.com and look up Watch This with Rick Ramos, you will find the entire library of 14, 15 years of what we've done. The series, all of our Halloween episodes, vampire films, Universal monster films, foreign horror, but also the cult movies, our series on the films that defined their decades. That was a lot of fun. The films that defined me as a man, that defined Ibrahim Chavez as his self. We've had a lot of fun doing this. We look forward to continuing doing this and digging deeper into both cinema, cinematic art, popular culture, but also what these films mean to us. So thank you for your support. For those of you who want to continue supporting or haven't supported, you can hit us up at buymeacoffee.com/watchrickramos. That's buymeacoffee.com/watchrickramos. As those of you can hear, maybe you can hear, Jerry Lee is awake, so it's time to take the little shit out. He has been patient. It's almost midnight, and I wish you all a Merry Christmas. We look forward to a Happy New Year. We're going to be opening up the year on the first, on New Year's Day with a new episode. We're going to be talking Akira Kurosawa's Ran, a film that really speaks to our time. It's a timeless film. It's a timeless. Shakespeare's King Lear is timeless in itself. Kurosawa's rendition doubles down on that, and here a couple of assholes come along to break it down, to talk about it, to maybe introduce it to some of you who have never seen it, and to go over those of you who have loved it for as long as we have. So thank you very much. We look forward to continuing this little ride for as long as you're willing to listen. Thank you very much.